Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pat and Jeff Show. I am your host, Patrick Gunnels, joined by my co-host, Dr. Jeff Solitzer of Pacific Northwest Awesomeness. And we are here to talk about some dumbs. Jeff, how are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great today, Patrick. Doing well, thank you.
I want to remind everybody, do us a favor, hit the thumbs up. Also, I want to let everybody know that I feel great. And I feel great because of these little powder packs that I get from epicyerba-mate.com. It is the Unamate from Unicity, and it's lemon flavor. And I take it in the morning, and I don't eat. And then I do eat lunch. So it just makes intermittent fasting bearable. They say that the millennial generation came along and they took skipping breakfast and renamed it intermittent fasting, and that's what this is. This is just me skipping breakfast, and I feel fantastic. Right now, it is 10:37 a.m. Central Daylight Time, and I feel like $1,000,000. Now, I haven't been perfect, but very, very little caloric intake compared to my normal chow down. So check it out at epicyerba-mate.com. That is epicyerba-mate.com, and if you can't spell it, well, just consider that to be like a filter. For we want the good spellers as our customer base. Anyway, I'm running my mouth too much. I want to talk about deep underground military bases, Jeff, because when COVID hit, weird stuff started coming to light in different ways that made me take the concept of networks of underground everything being down there and us just not knowing about it. What's been your red pill experience where this is concerned?
Well, it was around that same time, certainly between COVID and today. I've been listening to truthers and trying to find evidence on underground facilities. We refer to them as DUMBs, deep underground military bases, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because I think, and no pun intended, of course, but it's really just, it's underground cities, it's underground networks. There are supposed underground maglev train tunnels that would take you underneath oceans so you could travel between continents in a fraction of the time it takes us to fly. All sorts of information, all sorts of noise in many different directions. So I just thought maybe it'd be a good idea to just kind of talk about it and kind of maybe present some of the theories that are out there and let everyone decide for themselves and dive in deeper if they wish.
Absolutely. So we'll do this as an epic thread. And the website we're going to take a look at is the Phoenix Enigma, spelled exactly as you would expect if you know how to spell Phoenix and you know how to spell Enigma. And the website is just the article on DUMBs, deep underground military bases. There are two sorts of curiosity, the momentary and the permanent. The momentary is concerned with the odd appearance on the surface of things. The permanent is attracted by the amazing and consecutive life that flows on beneath the surface of things. It's Robert Wilson Lind. I'll blow this up so those of you who want to can read along. No fancy intro here. I'm just going to jump right into this one. I believe there to be solid evidence for undisclosed underground bases in the north and northwest regions of Arizona, otherwise known as DUMBs, or deep underground military bases. I don't base this, unintended, on reiterated conspiracy website material or Wikipedia searches, but rather on the culmination of decades of research and eyewitness accounts from locals, myself and others, and mounting circumstantial evidence. Underground bases are, in fact, a real thing. Underground military bases are an integral part of the U.S. military defense apparatus. They are not constructs of conspiracy theorists' collective paranoia. However, at one point, that approach was used as propaganda to explain them away and derail investigators who had discovered this then secret. Aside from known underground bases such as NORAD, Mount Vernon, Raven Rock Mountain Complex, etc., there is a category of underground bases known as DUMBs, or Deep Underground Military Bases. A quick internet search will generate hundreds of websites, most of which are simply copied lists of dumb locations from other sites by those interested in the subject and who are attempting to get the information out. But a few sites, like Richard Sauder's PhD, are rather detailed and represent original work and real expertise. Mr. Sauder filed FOIA requests years ago and accessed data repositories which are no longer available to the public. Like much of the fleeting information that bounces around, dare I say, conspiracy websites, much of it was acquired during the days of during the days following the FOIA Act. The US government didn't realize the general public would be so interested in digging into government records and rushed to redact as much information as they could, as fast as they could, regarding all manner of topics. Still, much of the information got out, and you can still find much of it bouncing around conspiracy websites today. Mr. Sauder got in before much of this information was sealed off and wrote the groundbreaking book on this subject titled Underground Bases and Tunnels. Jeff, I want to talk about FOIA for a second. I think I just heard that gentleman say he thinks that they just carelessly enacted FOIA and didn't realize how important it was. I don't think I buy that.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, it's obviously a deliberate tool, a developed tool, so that we could eventually find out what was really going on, for sure.
Yeah,
but think about it, Patrick. It couldn't have been released or a product of the deep state unless you buy into that concept that they have to tell us what they're going to do to us before they do it. And I don't know if I buy that, because these things, these beings, these humans, whatever they are, they're evil as hell. I don't think they really want to give us at all a clue as to what's going on, unless they mock us, and that's a possibility. But I think FOIA is a product of the good guys giving us, little Easter eggs here and there so we can start piecing it together.
Yeah, valid, but it's very hard to know.
Indeed.
All right. What's amazing is that much of this information isn't secret at all. For instance, Google, patent number 3,693,731, this patent was filed by multiple scientists from the Los Alamos Military Testing Facility in 1971. As you can see, this is a very real subject involving quite real technology. I think it amazing that this technology has been around since the 1950s, yet still evaded the general public's sphere of awareness. Jeff, let's look at the patent, just for fun. I have to blow this up more.
It's also interesting when I look at those photos, they show you these photos of these supposed boring machines, and to me, that could very easily be a restructured C-17 engine. Do you know what I mean? I'm not convinced that's a true boring machine. I don't even know what it would look like, but how do I know if that's real? I don't know.
I don't know how to build an engine, Jeff. I don't know what the parts of an engine are. I know that there's probably something involving something called a stator, and also possibly something called a rotor. That's all I know. And I don't know what those things look like. So yeah, I'm an idiot when it comes to mechanics. That's a big gap in my knowledge base that I probably really ought to see to. Method and apparatus for tunneling by melting. This is the abstract. A machine and method for drilling boreholes and tunnels by melting, in which a housing is provided for supporting a heat source and a heated end portion, and in which the necessary melting heat is delivered to the walls of the end portion at a rate sufficient to melt rock, and during operation of which the molten material may be disposed adjacent to the boring zone in cracks in the rock, and as a vitreous wall lining of the tunnel so formed. The heat source can be electrical or nuclear, but for deep drilling is preferably a nuclear reactor. Okay, so this describes something that melts the earth and then turns that melted thing into a glass-like wall for the tunnel thus created. Does that sound about accurate from what I just read?
It's a good description of what you just read, but let me go get my shovel, because there's a lot of stuff we got to get out of the way so we can figure out what's really going on here.
I know, right? Okay, so we just get the basic. That's the basic gist, that it turns the earth vitreous using So anyway, I hit the back button on StreamYard. I hit the back button on the wrong thing. All right. Anyway, that's the patent, and I need to hit the back button on the patent, not StreamYard.
Right.
And there we go. The Phoenix Enigma. Okay, so that's the patent. This patent was filed by multiple scientists from the Los Alamos Military Testing Facility in 1971. It's a very real subject involving quite real technology. Now, I don't like it when people just say, hey, there's a patent, so it's very real. Seriously? How can people think this way? That is very upsetting to me when somebody says, I found a patent number with an abstract, so it's real. For sure it's real. Do you feel what I'm saying there?
Well, I do for sure, and I'm in the same camp. I don't believe any of that stuff. I'm not sure that they can bore these tunnels. You know, there are theories where people believe these tunnels have been there. They've been there over time, and these were just like the buildings above ground. They were founded. They were repurposed. They were there already, particularly since if you understand, you know, my lunch break guy does a great presentation. He does maybe 2 pieces on Raven Rock and Cheyenne Mountain. And he talks about how, I think it was only like 2 years that it took to build these installations. And these were in the 50s and 60s. And there's like no way they could have been built that quickly. So I think there's a lot of stories around this. I'm not so sure what all of it is true.
Okay. All right. We're on the exact same page. That's a common thing with us. I think it amazing that this technology has been around since the 1950s, yet still evaded the general public's sphere of awareness. It provokes speculation as to what technologies have been invented and even implemented since then. Or these patents are being filed to explain the existence of these tunnels and why the government gets to own them. Check this out. Check out this photo. What is this?
You see stuff like this just makes me wonder. They're building a story.
Bullshit. They're not standing in front of this thing. This is bullshit. Yeah. Listen, guys, I'm looking right at this thing. Go to the phoenixenigma.com. There is no chance that this is not a group photo cropped out of some other photo and superimposed on a background of this thing that itself is probably only the size of my arm. Bro, this photo is bullshit.
Yes.
I mean, I will attest to that. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to, on my own time, blow it up and show these people and the way they seem to interact with the background. This is a sloppy, slapped together photo. Yeah. Tunnel boring machine with workers. Okay. Anyway. Tunnels are there. It doesn't mean just because this is bullshit doesn't mean the tunnels aren't there. So let's just keep going. The reasons for DUMBs are multiple, I would imagine. The most obvious being an emergency shelter systems network in times of political or military crisis and a secure position with which to fight and survive a nuclear war. However, many of the other reasons may and probably do include command and control, weapons deployment, undersea, submarine bases, scientific research, secret resource procurement, oil, gold, uranium, etc., hidden power sources, nuclear, geothermal. I can also envision a need for secure supercomputer banks in this technological world of ours, espionage, and storage of sensitive documents. This photo looks more real, but I'll get to it.
Yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that's a boring machine. I don't buy it. Like I said, that could easily be an engine to a big, airplane. God knows what that could be.
Yeah, we need mechanical people. How are these funded? Your tax dollars, of course. The answer is not very complicated, yet has a nearly 0% success rate of being able to be tracked down. Money is allocated for projects which private consultants and contracting firms are hired to complete. The military apparatus itself forms these companies, which are hired. Profit is made during the construction process. Secrecy is assured, and the installations are built. Private parties close to the projects profit from this, and the whole machine lurches forward. By the way, this is known as the military-industrial complex. I hope you've heard of it by now. If instead you are one of those people who actually still believe that our government is transparent and the only monies spent are those which are appropriated through legitimate means, you best go turn your TV back on and watch some more news. Well put. This speech was given one day before the 9/11 World Trade Center bombings. I'm assuming this is rum. Hey, let's watch it. Want to watch it? Let's see how long it is. This speech is 10 minutes and 52 seconds long. I don't have any problem with watching this. Hold for processing. Ta-da!
September 10th, 2001, you'll notice Donald Rumsfeld made a speech that the Pentagon had lost.
Can you hear it, Jeff?
Almost $3 trillion worth of unaccounted for expenses. Then you can see what happened in September 11th and notice that that story disappeared.
I was going to say terrifying.
There could be a large cover-up going on.
And I've mused over the fact that I've read some of these things and asked what they thought.
It was the major headlines on that morning of September 11th, where the day before Donald Rumsfeld made that speech, trillions of dollars gone.
Pentagon. The day before 9/11, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld declared war, not on foreign terrorists.
The adversary is closer to home. It's the Pentagon bureaucracy.
He said money wasted by the military poses a serious threat.
In fact, it could be said that it's a matter of life and death.
Rumsfeld promised change, but the next day, the world changed. And in the rush to fund the war on terrorism, the war on waste seems to have been forgotten.
My 03 budget calls for more than $48 billion in new defense spending.
More money for the Pentagon when its own auditors admit the military cannot account for 25% of what it already spends.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
2.3 trillion with a T. That's $8,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. To understand how the Pentagon can lose track of trillions, consider the case of one military accountant who tried to find out what happened to a mere 300 million.
We know it's gone, but we don't know what they spent it on.
Jim Minery, a former Marine turned whistleblower, is risking his job by speaking out for the first time about the millions he noticed were missing from one defense agency's balance sheets. Minery tried to follow the money trail, even crisscrossing the country looking for records.
The director looked at me and he says, "Why do you care about this stuff?" It took me aback, you know. My supervisor asked me why I care about doing a good job. So
he was reassigned and says officials then covered up the problem by just writing it off.
they got to cover it up. That's where the corruption comes in. They've got to cover up the fact that they can't do the job.
The Pentagon's Inspector General partially substantiated several of Minery's allegations, but could not prove officials tried to manipulate the financial statements. 20 years ago, Pentagon employee Franklin C. Spinney made headlines exposing what he calls the accounting games. He's still there, and although he does not speak for the Pentagon, he believes the problem has gotten worse.
Those numbers are pie in the sky. The books are cooked routinely year after year after year.
Retired Vice Admiral Jack Shanahan commanded the Navy's Second Fleet the first time Donald Rumsfeld served as Defense Secretary.
With good financial oversight, we could find $48 billion in loose change in that building without having to hit the taxpayer.
In the 2.5 minutes since this report began, the Pentagon has spent nearly $2 million, and it may never know where 25% of those tax dollars went. In Los Angeles, I'm Vince Gonzalez for Eye on America.
Okay, so anyway, that was 2001. The problem has not gotten better, would be my guess. And again, you know, maybe they turned all honest and stuff over the last 25 years. Alleged dumb locations. I love the fact that we call them dumbs. By no means do I wish to type out everyone else's list of professed underground bases, but for the purpose of this site and this article, following seems to be a complete list of suspected dumbs in Arizona, according to many of the sites that I visited. Fort Huachuca, that's 290 north, 116 degrees west. Saucer Base below, intelligence training above, mind control, including Gates Pass Base. Gila Mountain area south of Interstate 8, Grand Walsh Cliffs, Green Valley, Hualapai Mountains, nice. Rincon Mountains, Mount Lemon, possibly Mount Limon, Page, Arizona, perhaps in the Grand Canyon or under Lake Powell, Safford, near Safford, Arizona, Santa Catalina Mountains Base, Munns Park, Wickiup, believed to tunnel to Area 51, Papago Park Military Reservation. I didn't bother to reprint the commentary that went with many of these alleged sites. There are copious assertions stating that many of these dumbs tunnels to other sites across the country, interconnecting and creating a subterranean honeycombed network spanning the entire country. This topic quickly gets into aliens, UFOs, and withheld off-world technologies. There are whole documentaries on this topic, so if one so wishes to research it, but for our purposes here, I shall steer away from all that and concentrate on locations of dumbs in northern Arizona. First things first. I believe the locations of these dumbs to be under or near Camp Navajo, located in Belmont, Arizona, the Kingman Wickiup area, and maybe Munns Park. Of these three, I'm leaning heavily to Camp Navajo and something north of Wickiup. One sec. One, this region is centrally located. It lies between the NSA building in Utah, the ICBMs in southern Arizona, NORAD in Colorado, Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, and all the bases in California. Two, this area is the first viable area south of the Grand Canyon. The next available locations would be north of the canyon. It also runs along the main transportation routes. Any tunnels coming from east would either have to veer through the north, through Utah, or south along the southern rim of the Grand Canyon. This remote high desert corridor is along a natural route. Okay, so this is arguing for where the locations of dumbs might be.
Hey, Patrick, real quick, can you show the first map that he has in this piece, just maybe a frame up?
This one?
Oh, keep going a little bit more, please.
This thing?
One more. I think it's actually, there you go, that one. So there are a lot of people believe when he mentions that it connects to aliens and all this kind of stuff, that is actually a depiction of these bases that are supposedly located in the United States that follow the same layout of the Orion constellation. So there's some significance about that. Now,
well, I mean, heck,
yeah,
I can see why you might find Orion somewhere in there.
It seems to be, you know, they superimpose it and it's pretty close. And then there are some crazy articles that I've seen recently where it depicts also these Nazi war, these marches and things that follow the same patterns and stuff like that. Take that off the table. But the fact that it replicates or very closely replicates a constellation makes me believe, you know, maybe it was there a while ago, a long time ago. Because remember all the stories of native people and, you know, following the constellations and such for whatever reason, or aliens, but I don't know.
No, I mean, there's a million different reasons to follow constellations. Okay, but we have strong arguments being made here as to the specific location of them. Closest one to me would be Dallas. Other Arizona strangeness, likely dumb locations, the Bradshaw Ranch. Bradshaw Ranch, although once a simple cattle ranch, has become quite the location for UFO enthusiasts as well as paranormal scientists in general. Once a private 90-acre cattle ranch owned by Bob Bradshaw, the Forest Service cut allotments to the property, limiting the number of cattle he could run on his land. Slowly but surely, cattle ranching became more difficult and less profitable. It was the mid-1990s when Bob's son, John Bradshaw, took over the ranch and operated it as a tourist destination. John, a local businessman, politician, and photographer, grew up on the ranch and obviously knows the area well. Using his home ranch to cater to the tourism industry, John offered backcountry jeep rides, horseback riding, and cookout dinners, but for some reason soon ended up selling out to the U.S. government. Today, the ranch sits behind a triple locked gate and is operated, managed, guarded by the United States Forest Service. What a jackass. One would think the federal government's purchase would mean that the land would be open to the public, as is most all other federal land in the United States, with the exception of military and sensitive sites. But no, this old ranch is locked off from all public admittance with a sign warning that, quote, all trespassers will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. All inquiries and requests for passage onto the ranch are routinely denied. The reason circulating is that the area is a sensitive archaeological area and requires protection. Strange that there is no mention of any archaeological sites on the Bradshaw Ranch prior to the federal government seizing control of the site. And even if there were, this would be the first entire ranch seized by the federal government guards regularly. There are thousands of archaeological sites in Arizona that the federal government Forest Service doesn't protect on a daily basis. It is this strange behavior on the part of the federal government that has spurred the multitudes of speculation and conspiracy theories. Theories which include Bigfoot habitat, UFO landing location, interdimensional portals, and the location of an entrance to the Dome located just west of Sedona. Some speculate that this Dome connects with the one located at Belmont, as it is only 35 miles to the north. Jeff, thought?
You know, there are...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just thinking, they shut down his ranch. Why? Because they needed to build an entrance to a Dome? Or they shut down his ranch because they discovered a Dome?
I believe it's your second guess.
Yeah.
And I think that these are all over the United States, frankly, all over the world. But it's interesting that they wall it all off. I mean, obviously something nefarious is going on, something certain we don't understand. It just doesn't make any sense. So but why such protections? It's just so bizarre.
And it doesn't have to be nefarious.
True.
It could be, this is very important, and for the people's protection, we need to keep them away from this.
True.
I don't even discount that in any major way. These people who keep things secret from us, for all I know, could be doing it for our own good. It's not my default explanation, but it is possible. So anyway, okay. I find more than coincidental that UFO sightings around the Sedona area increased dramatically in the late 90s, immediately following the Bradshaw Ranch acquisition. Dude, I think that's important.
Well, are you familiar with what people say about Sedona?
No.
Sedona is supposed to be a very mystical location, similar to the Grand Canyon. You know, there's only 5% of the Grand Canyon as a public person you're allowed to explore. I mean, there's supposed to be tons of pyramids there and obviously connections to tunnels and underground things that are going on. And I think Sedona has a piece of that as well. And this sounds like this is kind of in between, I think. So it could be a reason, like you just said, they might have found something here and they had to wall it off to keep people away from it.
Maybe. But the UFO stuff, it just means flying thing. You don't know what it is. And right after the FedGov took takeover of the Bradshaw Ranch. Yeah, I think that's a great It's a great observation. It was at this time that the Sedona UFO craze merged with the New Age movement as well. Please note, I don't use the word alien. Although there are those camps who believe that non-human entities do live and work in these domes. The term UFO is an aviation term used by military and civilian personnel alike. It simply means objects flying around, cannot be identified, and the Sedona area sees more than its fair share of UFOs. Or also UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. Arizona was the 6th last year in total UFO sightings. I don't know what year this was written, with Oregon being number 1, according to the annual MUFON report. That's MUFON.com.
Well, you know, that doesn't surprise me. I used to live in Oregon. So, hey, by the way, Patrick, Sedona, they do mystical tours there, and they consider certain parts of the land sacred, as do many of the New Agers, quote unquote, who are drawn to Sedona's vortexes. What would it be, vortices? But I don't know.
Vortices, yeah.
Yeah, but these supposedly are focal points in the Earth's natural energy grid, places where energy enters and leaves the planet. Psychic powers, emotions, and talents are stronger in Sedona, it is claimed. So there's something going on there for sure.
MUFON. That's not remarkable in itself to take into account the sightings in relation to population. Per 100,000 people, Arizona jumps to number 2 in the nation with the highest concentration of those sightings occurring in Coconino County. That is the Sedona area and north of the Grand Canyon. This means that the Sedona Flagstaff area is responsible for more UFO sightings than everywhere in the country, with the exception of Oregon. And the United States leads the world in reported UFO sightings, which puts this region as number 2 in the world. I find this extremely significant. Flagstaff is gorgeous. I love that terrain. I used to think that the stories of government guarding this property were bunk, more Sedona woo-woo, if you will. But while interviewing a good friend of mine for this article, she confirmed that they were very real indeed. She states that in 1997, she'd been riding out in the Bradshaw Ranch area before she knew anything about Bradshaw Ranch, when she was stopped by 2 uniformed men armed with automatic rifles. They told her she couldn't go any further and to turn around. She didn't see any fences at the time, wasn't about to argue with 2 armed guys in the desert. She described them as white males, mid-20s, clean-cut, black uniforms, no insignia, just a clear plastic pocket protector type thing where the arm patch would be, sunglasses, monotone. I've seen guys wearing flight suits that are similar up at the airport. That's a pretty darn good description, if you ask me. She went on to say that she'd seen a similar uniform on a pilot at the Sedona airport. She talked to a man who landed a black helicopter there. She asked him about the craft, and he told her that he was a test pilot for Boeing. That's why there are no markings on either the chopper or his uniform. That's pretty cool, dude.
Men in Black. This is Men in Black.
Yeah.
I know. Hey, by the way, Sedona is located on one of the ley lines, or many of the ley lines that are in that part of the country. So there could be a connection there as well, that some of these domes are located near these ley lines.
Yeah, man. Dude, I really want to see more about this Bradshaw Ranch. If John Bradshaw knows anything at all about what's going on at the ranch where he grew up, he hasn't told anyone, and no one has come forward regarding the matter, or maybe he has, and it's just gotten lost in the woo-woo that is Sedona. It could also be that he isn't aware of the goings-on out there, and that all the high strangeness began after the government acquisition. He does, however, continue to operate a successful tour company in Sedona, providing jeep and horseback tours into the backcountry. He also provides excursions along the paranormal vein, including conspiracy and spiritual tours. His company is called A Day in the West and comes highly reviewed on TripAdvisor. Just real quick, when was this article written? That's important.
It is. And by the way, Bradshaw Ranch is located in Sedona.
January 23rd, 2016. right before Trump won the election. Dang. I'm so excited about this now. I want to go to this freaking ranch. Of course,
Have you ever been to Sedona?
I've driven through it. I've driven through Flagstaff. I just think to myself, damn, this is really nice.
Yeah, I think most of us have driven through it, but lately a lot of people are thinking that's the real attraction, is really Sedona. Don't drive through it. Go there instead. But interesting.
I stayed in Kingman.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a big Kingman article piece that's coming up here. So
okay.
Yeah.
I've stayed in Kingman. I loved Kingman. I loved everybody in Kingman. I wanted to go back, and then I forgot about Kingman. All right, where am I here? Spooks, Munz Park, Wiki Up. This is going to be great. All right. Anyway, let's keep going. Oh, crap. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll just. All right. Munz Park, Arizona. Munz Park, named after an early settler, has been the location of a supposed underground military facility for quite some time now. I could recall when I was in high school hearing something about this. I can also remember seeing military vehicles at Munz Park during a trip up to Flagstaff in my teens. While this doesn't mean much, as there is a National Guard depot just northwest of here, it does seem strange that the rumors of an underground military installation in the area just won't go away. A quick search will bring up this abovetopsecret.com page outlining the personal testimony of the professed construction of a dome at this site. Regardless of what took place here decades ago, I believe it more feasible that the dome in the area is actually located at Belmont. Now, Wiki Up, Arizona. Where do I begin? If you've read my bio page, you'll know that I spent 10 years living and working in Wiki Up, Arizona, affectionately known to Wiki-Uppans as the Big W. I moved there in summer 1994, worked at our family-owned convenience store, gas station, Subway restaurant franchise. If you've driven through Wiki Up, you know the spot. I can remember with perfect clarity and will recount for you my conversations with several people regarding underground military activity in the Wiki Up, Arizona area. Although admittedly anecdotal, everything you're about to read is 100% true as told to or witnessed by me. Some of these stories may seem off topic at first, but I promise it'll come full circle. My goal here is to relay the immense amount of eyewitness to this phenomenon and also to paint an overall picture of what it was like in the Big Sandy Valley during that time, which I feel is important to put in perspective the information. A story without context is nothing. Context without understanding is even less. Spooks at the gas station. As I stated above, I worked our family-owned convenience store in Wiki Up regularly for 10 years. It was roughly 2 years after I'd moved to the Big W. When one afternoon, I walked a casually dressed man. He caught my attention as he was spending just a little too much time hanging around. And as I was keeping an eye on him, he realized it and approached me. I'd seen him making rounds with the other employees, engaging in what seemed to be small talk. This didn't seem strange at first, as travelers were always asking questions about road conditions, wrecks along the highway, weather up ahead, etc. He approached me, smiled, and started making small talk about Wiki Up. He asked whether or not I lived in the area, which may seem nosy to outsiders, non-Wiki Up folks, but believe me, when you live in a town of 300 people, you get that question a lot. Daily, in fact. I told him that I did. He asked me if I spent much time in the desert surrounding the town. I said that I did. He seemed quite a bit more interested at this point and began asking me about underground structures in the area and the tunnels that led to them. I told him this was the first I'd heard of them, but he insisted the entrances looked just like manhole covers and were everywhere around Wiki Up. I said that I really didn't know anything about it, but found it interesting all the same. It was at this point I looked down and noticed that his shoes didn't really match his clothes. His dress was that of a casual traveler, but his shoes were shiny black dress shoes. Something didn't seem right. He said he was going to get some more coffee and asked me to join him at the tables for a while. I told him I couldn't as I was working, so he just stood there next to the cash register for a while, asking me about different roads in the desert, where they went, and when I'd last been on them. This I began to find a little strange. Not only did he want general information, but he wanted to know the last time that I personally had been in that neck of the woods. I became obviously vague, and he eventually got the point and walked outside. I followed him outside, pretending to check to see if the trash needed changing, and got his license plate. To my surprise, or maybe not, his vehicle had government plates. Later that night, I went over to my friend's house for some coffee and told her about what had happened. My friend happened to work at a trading post about a quarter-mile down the road. She looked up and said, "Oh my God, that guy spent 2 hours at the trading post asking everyone there the same questions." I asked her if she'd noticed his plates, and she said no. When I told her about the government plates, she just smiled and said it wasn't the first time the government had been poking around the big W. This same encounter was repeated 2 years later in an almost identical scenario, only this time the guy hanging around asking questions didn't have government plates. He was, however, asking all the locals about tunnels under the desert leading to underground facilities. This is freaking weird, dude. What is this guy doing?
I don't know. We'll find out. Keep going. It's good.
Hey, I'm totally not from the government. Have you checked out any underground facilities? No? All right, good. I'm going to go ask about 19 other people the same question. Please don't look at my shoes. Have a nice day.
Right.
The bigger picture. Not related so much to underground bases, but still in the vein of government spooks. There were a number of believed government agents who attempted to gather intelligence in the town of Wickiup in the mid-1990s to the early 2000s. Keep in mind that these were the days of Ruby Ridge, Branch Davidians, and the Oklahoma City bombing, 92 through 95. Kingman, Arizona, only 50 miles to the northwest, was home to the media event that surrounded Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols in the aftermath of the Oklahoma City bombing. A huge media propaganda campaign attempted to paint a government entrapment sting operation as a homegrown right-wing militia organized an attack on the federal government as payback for Ruby Ridge and the Waco, Texas incidents. I'm sure there are some people in Kingman who still have their "I survived the FBI invasion" t-shirts, which followed the government black op known as the Oklahoma City bombing. During the years following those events, there were a number of people who moved into the Wickiup area, going so far as to buy property, mingle with the locals, and make their supposed anti-government views widely known while enjoying their coffee at the local diner. Whereas this didn't seem at all strange at first, eventually it did when one of them, a guy named Bob, began inquiring around town if there was anyone who was interested in buying grenades and perhaps a Jeep-mounted M60 machine gun. What a dickhead. We did a little bit of recon on this guy ourselves and discovered that he was well known within the gun show circuit, especially Tucson area. It seemed he was always attempting to sell illegal arms to people he had befriended on the down low. And although everyone knew about this guy and several licensed gun dealers had reported him to the authorities, he somehow managed to avoid the attention of the ATF and not get busted. Hey, Jeff, you want to buy a nuke? Anyway. In short, recreational McNukes. In short, Bob was widely believed to be a spook, apparently a retarded spook. That is, an undercover government operative. I even remember his cover story. He stated that he was an inventor and working on a thermal guided scoping system for a large caliber platform firearm. He had been in negotiations with military contractors and was planning on selling his patent to them and retiring upon perfecting his concept. So, in between official U.S. military weapons contract business, this guy was attempting to sell illegal black market grenades and artillery to a bunch of small town kids. Yeah, something doesn't fit. There was also once a traveling multi-level marketing salesman who attempted to befriend everyone in town, and he eventually talked me into having a meeting with him. I should have known something was up, as the first goal in his personal sales model was to have me write down for him as many names of not only friends and family as I could possibly think of, but of everyone I'd ever known from my school years up. Supposedly, this is going to be a tool with which to build a sales and marketing target objective. Needless to say, that meeting ended quickly. Whereas I have nothing to hide from my corrupt government, I don't wish to cooperate with their intelligence gathering on me all the same. Don't worry, bro. They'll just pull it off from your Facebook profile. It would be a few years later, after I was stopped for a traffic speeding violation, I would learn that I had been the target of a 3-year investigation for believed illegal arms and drugs trafficking, or at least that's what they told me. I was detained, and while not quite at gunpoint, the officer requested backup, and the officer covering me never took his hand off his gun. These were people I knew in a small town of 300 people. Somebody told them something. My vehicle was then ripped apart on the side of Highway 93 by DPS officers who had been brought into the investigation, the entire time the one covering me attempting to get me to admit to him that I smoked weed and meth and associated with people in town who did. It was quite surreal and strange, to tell you the truth. Of course, these suspicions were ludicrous and unfounded, and of course, they found nothing, as I have never been involved in arms or drug trafficking. Town of 300, you think there'd be at least some meth. What else is there to do?
Well, it just sounds like to me this whole set, it's like a setup for blackmail, right? Just to try to blackmail these kids to tell them stuff so that the feds could get information that they're withholding, or if they are withholding information. That's what it kind of sounded like me when I was reading this. It was just a hoax just to get him to spill the beans on stuff he wasn't willing to talk about yet.
Or stuff he doesn't know about. Because what the hell? It's freaking crazy.
The whole thing is, it got kind of weird.
I was furious at such overreach and took my complaints to the local DPS sergeant, who then informed me about the ongoing investigation. He stated that because of my age, mid-20s, and the many trips I made weekly to Phoenix and Kingman for banking purposes related to our gas station, that it was believed that I was into questionable activity. Holy crap. In hindsight, it is a little sad as to how many taxpayer dollars could have been saved had they simply approached me and had a conversation. However, in the years that have followed, seeing all the clandestine ops which have occurred in our nation, with patsies taking the falls for them, I can't help but wonder if I wasn't being singled out for some kind of fall myself. Of course, I have no proof of this, but I was wild and loud and did stand out more than a little bit. Now, that's an important data point right there. People didn't like you, bro. With some public media direction, it wouldn't have been hard to convince people who didn't know me that I was capable of any atrocity they could have thought up and deployed. Those truly were strange days in the Big W. This guy's one heck of a storyteller, by the way.
You know, that was the piece that I enjoyed the most. Whether it was real or not, it was really a good read. It's entertaining.
I know, right?
Yeah.
All right. I relay these stories to show the reader the high level of government military activity in the WikiUp area, and to illustrate the lengths to which our government will go once they have pointed their lumbering machine in a determined direction. Whereas the above accounts don't directly pertain to DUMBs, a very strong connection can be made between the physical location of government complexes and clandestine government operations. Take, for example, Colorado. Does anyone think the increased mass shootings in Colorado, Columbine 1999, YWAM New Life shootings 2007, Platte Canyon High School 2006, Aurora Theater shooting 2012, Arapahoe High School shooting 2013, Colorado Springs shooting 2015, immediately followed by per-constructed anti-firearm legislation is organic in nature and doesn't have anything to do with the huge presence of U.S. military and high-level government facilities located in the region, just like New Orleans in the late 50s and early 60s. It's my opinion that Colorado is now referring to early 2016, a hotbed of nefarious government ops. To those of you who've never thought about this before, it may seem paranoid, but it is only now that all the New Orleans information is coming out into the open and Americans are learning about what took place around the time John F. Kennedy was murdered. What better place for special ops and social behavioral testing to occur than where the government already has a tight control on local and state law enforcement, news media, and politicians. Federalization equals socialism, and socialism equals totalitarianism. They are synonymous. Is it a wonder that recreational marijuana is being beta tested in a state where so many social conditioning programs are emanating from? Don't get me wrong, as a botanist, I'm all for marijuana being used for medicine, but it is an extremely powerful and complex plant, which in the end, I believe, will be weaponized, and I'm afraid is being used to create a docile, complacent society. Dang, bro. Good call. Much like your television. Make no mistake, DC interests and DC money run Colorado. Colorado is Washington, D.C. West. NORAD, the new Denver airport, Air Force Academy, Buckley Air Force Base, Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Base, Peterson Air Force Base, Stryver Air Force Base, Fort Carson Army Base, Pueblo Chemical Depot Army Base are all located there. Dude, the prediction about marijuana, freaking accurate. I can buy nuclear-powered gummies on my phone when I'm playing Tetris. It runs ads, and I bought them. I bought some gummies that I will never take again because they turned me into a retard for 2 days. And then I was like, okay, I guess it was too strong. I'll eat half of one. Turned me into a retard for 1 day. After that, I just said, what am I supposed to do with these freaking things? So, yeah, I don't take them because they're too strong. Yeah. All right. Cowboys and convoys. While riding roundup with a local cowboy / acquaintance, the topic of strange occurrences around Wickiup came up, and I told him about the spooks who'd been asking about tunnels around town. He looked at me and said something to the effect of, oh, that makes a lot more sense now. I asked him to explain. And he told me that he'd been working on a ranch up near the Highway 93 / I-40 junction, to the southwest of the junction to be exact. He said he'd been sitting his horse atop a hill overlooking the surrounding countryside for cattle when he saw a convoy of 3 black SUVs and a town car come driving along the old Highway 93. Old 93 was once the original Highway 93, but was replaced by the new highway junction and is now a maintained county road. Old 93 runs between the Petro station on I-40 and comes out about 4.5 miles south of the I-40 junction on Highway 93. It cuts right through the area believed to be the location of the Kingman Area Dome. The vehicles turned off onto a secondary road and continued up to what appeared to be a parcel of private property. There, a man got out of the first vehicle and unlocked the doors of a metal shed. This shed looked only big enough to hold one vehicle. The first vehicle then drove into the structure while the others waited. After a minute, the second SUV followed. This repeated 2 more times until all the vehicles had vanished. My friend just sat there trying to figure out how they got all those vehicles into such a small shed. He then began wondering what 4 shiny black SUVs were doing in the desert in the first place. Wait, I thought it was 3 SUVs and a town car. Whatever. After this conversation, I did some research and discovered that the area just to the southwest of the 93 I-40 junction is indeed believed to be the location of a dumb. I wish I'd gotten the exact location of where he was. That would narrow it down greatly, but I didn't. I have since fallen out of contact with the old acquaintance who relayed me this information and not conferred with him as to whether or not he would like me to divulge his identity. It is for this reason that he will remain unknown in this article. Dude, tiny shed, tons of SUVs, they went underground. It doesn't mean it's a deep underground military base. It does mean they went underground, though.
Yeah. That shed was likely what, an elevator? Who knows, right?
Elevator, or just had a ramp that went underground.
Yeah.
A spiral underground driveway. A quick Google map search of the Petro Kingman area will pull up a petro fueling station 14 miles east of Kingman, Arizona. If you plot 6.4 miles due south of the Petro station, you will see what appears to be an old ranch. It has a lake on site, a circular house with 2 protruding sections, stables on the north side of the property, and a 3,500-foot airstrip as well. Nice. Built right up against the eastern edge of the Hualapai mountain range, this ranch, Hualapai, there we go, was originally the Odle Ranch, but Mr. Odle later sold it to Don Laughlin, whom the town of Laughlin, Nevada is named for, who donated it to Mojave County Community College. It was then purchased by a Scott Fisher, and I lost track of it there. This may be the ranch area my friend saw the SUVs enter into. It seems reasonable to me that if the federal government managed to seize a ranch in Sedona for whatever reason, that the same model would be used in other parts of the country as well. In fact, fronting a property in a civilian's name and perhaps even operating it as a working cattle ranch while things go on underground, either actually or metaphorically, seems to be a great strategy for clandestine ops. Not unlike a mafia restaurant, or perhaps like one of the many civilian-owned import-export companies that the CIA has made a partner out of unbeknownst to the owner. This happens when the owner of a legitimate business takes on a partner who is actually a CIA operative. This agent then uses the company to move product, drugs, gold, weapons, etc., while profits are funneled into black ops. Whereas this has been standard operating procedure for decades now and is no longer considered secret. I'm only speculating as to this tactic in relation to dumbs. Jeff, you got anything right now? Because I feel like this story is a freight train. I can't stop.
Well, it's interesting that, they mentioned this community college. I had seen a video that was talking about how there are these underground tunnels and dumbs located underneath many Walmarts and colleges. And I'm like, what's the connection between Walmart and colleges? But then I saw this in this article and I'm like, whoa, maybe there is a connection somewhere. But the Walmart thing was kind of interesting too. We can talk about that later. But stuff is crazy. But this guy writes so well. It is intriguing. And that's why I wanted to present it. I thought it was pretty cool.
Okay. So this area not only mirrors many of the reasons listed above for the Belmont site, but includes the following. 1, easy access to I-40, yet is hidden away nicely. I was amazed at how many of my friends who still live in the Wickiup area had no idea this place was even here, despite all the dust up about the property trading hands so many times and once even being donated. 2, the main access point to this ranch is on I-40 and is actually a truck stop. This would ensure that the supplying of this installation was kept low-key. 3, it is defensible. The site is up against a mountain range, and mountains are obviously quite secure, which is why the U.S. government builds into them in the first place. And 4, it has an airstrip. While I presented an argument here for a dumb at the old Odle Ranch, I'm not 100% convinced of it at this time. I present this information simply to add what I know of the topic to the collective researchers out there in the hopes that perhaps something will click with someone else who has more pieces of the puzzle. The area does seem an ideal location, and much circumstantial evidence does exist to point to something in the area. I would like to take a brief break. Number one, to just just talk about this, because it is amazing. He makes such a great case that there's a dumb there. I don't know who this guy is. I don't think he wants us to know who he is. But that was really good stuff. The PhoenixEnigma.com. I'm going to learn more about this guy.
It's very interesting stuff. And like I said, he's a good writer, but what he talks about, putting pieces of the puzzles together, you can begin to understand that there's a legitimate story here.
Oh, for sure. Now, I'm going to get that what do you call it? The one, the Catherine Austin Fitts talks about this. And I just need to make sure, I just need to pull up the, hold please, because you gave me that video on Tucker Carlson Network. And this is Catherine Fitts. There we go. Bankers versus the West. And I have to go to hold for processing. I need to get my butt over to minute 35 to play this.
Yeah, it's about where she starts talking about the dumbs and about the money. And there was another part where she got even more descriptive, but I couldn't find it. I remembered it, but it's about, it's kind of interesting. So see what it comes up. It's about how long? Maybe 15 minutes. I don't know if you want to play that long.
Oh gosh. Well, let's just get into it briefly.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what happens. I have to sit through Tucker's ad on for Simply Safe first. And I'm not going to actually present Simply Safe while Tucker is doing his ad. I'm going to do an ad right now to remind everybody that the amazing Rainfall special, Rainfall, guys, Rainfall is a lotion as opposed to a serum, or as opposed to a balm, or as opposed to a body butter. Do I have a body butter here anywhere? No. This is a lotion. It's aloe, about 65% aloe, and then the remaining 35% are food-grade plant oils, the exotic ones, the ones you don't see in any lotion out there. And it doesn't have any of the crap that you expect to find in lotions. The only preservative that it has is food-grade salts, sodium derivatives, whereas in almost every lotion you see out there, they use toxic phenoxyethanol. This is the most natural lotion that money can buy, as opposed to going out and squeezing from an aloe plant and mixing it yourself, which you really don't want to do. And even if you do it, that stuff will rot in like 3 days. I digress. Point is, Rainfall is the very best lotion in the world. And right now, when you get an 8-ounce bottle, you get a 2-ounce travel bottle for free. Expires Monday at midnight. Make sure to use promo code Shapiro for an extra 10% off. TulipBlooms.shop. That is TulipBlooms.shop. Promo code Shapiro. All right, here we go. Catherine Austin Fitts. Make sure I just can't get it to hit 35 minutes on the nose. All right, so check out Catherine Austin Fitts. Listen to her talk about these things just for a couple of minutes, and then we'll discuss.
At missingmoney.solera.com, we have years and years of documentation, including the government financials that show this. And so the question is, where's all this money going? And one of the things I've looked at in the process of looking at where all this money is going is the underground base and city infrastructure and transportation system that's been built. And
I'm sorry?
Yes. So we have built an extraordinary number of underground bases and supposedly transportation systems. Some of these are some of these are documented as part of the national security infrastructure. I think there are many more. So
in the United States?
In the United States, on all over the world. But from 2021 to 2023, I took one of the smartest subscribers in the Solera Report network, and he and I spent 2 years collecting all the data and all the allegations on underground bases. And then we we systematically went through and tried to estimate our guess. This is totally a guess of how many underground bases, both underground in the United States, but also underground under the ocean around the United States. And our estimate was 170 with a transportation network connecting them.
And what would be the purpose?
The purpose, if you thought you were going to get a near extinction event, so there, to me, there are two purposes. You have so many activities going on that you need to keep secret, that you're basically building the capacity to, for example, if you're doing a secret space program, you need to platform it from, things that can't be seen. But I think if you're worried about a near extinction event, that's.
So I know nothing about this other than my only window into it. I knew a contractor who worked on one in Washington, in the city of Washington, D.C. Right. And I remember him telling me about a power box, like a transformer box on Constitution Avenue that he told me, because he worked on it personally, was actually the exit, the egress from the White House. That was kind of by vehicle. I thought that was, I was like, really? He goes, oh yeah, no, I installed it, I know. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy that in the middle of this big city where I was on Constitution Avenue every day, that you could build something like that without me knowing it. Under the VP's house at the Naval Observatory, same thing. I think most people know that. Next to my brother's house on Macomb Street in DC. But that's, I always thought that was like preparation for nuclear war. Like, I didn't really think about it that much. Some of it
is, it's preparation for catastrophe.
So, but you think that there are facilities like that in other places outside DC?
Oh, yeah. So if you're interested, we have a great interview. I did an interview of Richard Dolan on underground bases on the Solari Report, and it's sort of an introduction to the topic, and it's based on a lot of the research of a guy named Richard Sauter, who is very hard to interview. So Richard kind of went through all the material. And clearly it's, I don't know if you ever saw, Washington Post did a project, it was in 2010 or 12, called Top Secret America. And one of the reporters, it was a team of 2 reporters, one of them put together a database of all the different top secret installations that had been built in the country, including since the Patriot Act. And what you saw was just this explosion of money in building so many both underground and above ground facilities.
Just as a theological matter, I hate to say this, but I think it's true. If you're building a lot underground, you're on the wrong side.
Of course.
So interesting.
I don't understand if you're building underground, you're on the wrong side. Well, that's just so random, bro. Specious. I don't know that these guys are the angels or anything, but that's a stupid thing to say. Oh, if you're building underground, you're on the wrong side. Okay.
Yeah. What's interesting though here is that, this is a woman who was assistant secretary to HUD under Bush, right?
Correct. That's exactly what she was.
And that's her claim to fame, so to speak. I look at her like Jan Halper Hayes and some of these others that kind of appear on the scene. Yeah, they appear, they do a tour, they kind of are popular for 3, 5, 6 months, and then you never hear from them again, And I don't know, is it part of the 60,000 man army? Is it something else? It's just kind of weird how all of a sudden this woman appears and starts making these statements about all the money spent on these dumbs. And I like her description because this is what I've heard in other places as well. That it's not just underground military bases. It's highways. There are truckers who are emphatic when they claim that they would go underground in Atlanta and they could go above ground in Seattle. I mean, some really outrageous claims, but that's been, a lot of these truckers have been talking about this. And I don't know if you ever heard, did you ever hear that this story about some kind of barista from Starbucks who worked in one of the underground Starbucks under LA? and he gives all the celebrities their special drinks, whatever they like, because the celebrities all travel. Tom Cruise liked the specific drink, whatever it was, coffee, I don't know what it was, macchiato, something, who the hell knows. They would travel underneath all the hustle and bustle and the traffic that we have to endure. They go from point A to point B under these underground, and it's like within seconds instead of hours, to travel. So I don't know.
Seconds?
Well, maybe not seconds. Okay, minutes, but you get the idea.
Bro, let's be more specific.
Yeah.
What is the claim of location to location transport, and what is the rough claimed time savings?
Well, going from Atlanta to Seattle underground, I believe the time save was half the time because it was more direct, but more importantly, it didn't have any issues or concerns about the elements, going up through mountain ranges and snow and all that kind of stuff.
Underground, straight shot, but it's still a road. You're still traveling on a wheeled vehicle.
Well, those are what the truckers were saying. Now, if you listen to other people, Real Gene Decode, if you can track the Real Gene Decode in his website, he's famous for being an expert on the DUMBs. He's got tons and tons of interviews and other pieces where he documents the stories. And he talks about maglev trains that are underground that travel at Mach 1 and Mach 2 speed. And they not only go underneath the U.S. from city to city, but they go underneath the oceans and go from continents, so that travel would be a lot shorter. And that's significant. And that's when I believe, when I see, Trump and everyone else now talking about the white hats degrading and destroying air travel, I think the reason for that is to get us to start thinking about there has to be a better way to travel. And I'm beginning to think that's the travel. The way to travel is underground in these trains. They're maglev, there's no resistance. That's the way it's supposed to work, and they're fast as hell.
Bro, the technological problems that would have to be solved to do this maglev thing, that's incredibly advanced. It would have, in my opinion, it would have to be technology that was already there.
Well, I think you're hitting it right on the nail on the head, so to speak, because it has already been there. But when you look at people who would do a little experiment, they show you how if there's the appropriate magnetic charges, and I can't remember the actual explanation, but it has to do with the electrons and the protons, right? That they repel each other, which makes that little metal object move through this tube with no resistance. And that's how they get those speeds. There's absolutely no resistance. So it does make sense. I believe it's a technology that's already been there. I think it's part of those, 6,000 patents. I know we talked about patents, how silly patents can be. That doesn't mean it's real. But I believe these 6,000 patents that a lot of people refer to is part of this thing, and part of these underground bases.
We found this amazing technology. Quick, let's patent it.
Yeah, I know. Well, if you think about it, I think it's technology that was stolen by the bad guys, and they patented it so they would make money from it no matter who would use it. If one day they would leak out some of it, which is what they've done with cell phone technology and some of the crap that we know today that we think is amazing. I mean, this stuff, and I've said this way back, if you remember, basic tenets of the Tartarian presentation was, we're not the most advanced society. We're just getting drips and drabs of the most advanced technology that was available years and years ago. So there you go. It kind of fits.
It really, really does. I'll go ahead and wrap up the show now. I think we've got a really good handle on this topic. Everybody hit the thumbs up and put comments. Let us know what you think about this material and share with your friends, of course. This is a Pat and Jeff show. We do it every Saturday, right after the Saturday D-Class show, usually starting around, 11 p.m. Eastern, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. And we're just having a great time here doing this once a week. And so thanks everybody for watching, and do us a big, big favor. Go to tulipblooms.shop and spend money there. We have products that you will not find anywhere else. We have Blue Calm, which contains the incredible blue tansy. We have castor blend and a whole bunch of different essential oil concoctions. All of these things do stuff for your skin that you won't find anywhere else. It's tulipblooms.shop, promo code Shapiro, because Ben Shapiro is the very best neocon out there. So anyway, Jeff, any final thoughts?
No, but thanks for your time. I mean, this is great stuff. I love this stuff. And again, just do your own research and figure out for yourself what makes sense to you. But there's something in this. This is real. It's interesting. Very interesting.
It really is. All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. See you next Saturday. Take care.